cub trapped under fallen logs. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning fog rolled thick across the forest floor, wrapping itself around everything like a wet gray blanket. Deep in the woods, in a small clearing, 17-month-old Ava Bennett crawled toward the window of her family's cabin. Her tiny fingers gripped the wooden sill as she pulled herself up, pressed her face against the cold glass, and watched the world outside come alive. Somewhere in the distance, birds called to each other through the mist. Ava cooed back, her reflection staring right back at her in the glass. Her dark curls bounced as she wiggled with excitement. But then, another sound cut through the birdsong. A sound that made her freeze. A low whimper. Ava tilted her head, listening hard. The sound came again, clearer this time. It sounded like crying. It sounded like pain. Her small body stiffened. Something out there needed help. The whimper grew louder, more desperate. Ava's eyes widened as she pressed herself tighter against the window. Through the lifting fog, she saw movement. Something brown and furry, pinned beneath a massive, fallen log. More logs lay scattered around it, creating a deadly prison. A bear cub, no bigger than Ava herself, struggled under the weight. Its tiny paws clawed at the dirt, trying to find purchase, trying to pull itself free. But the log was too heavy, too thick. The cub's cries became weaker with each failed attempt. Ava's heart pounded in her chest. Her mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she made breakfast. Her father sat by the fireplace, reading the morning paper. Neither of them could hear the desperate sounds from the forest. Neither of them knew something was wrong. The cub let out another pitiful whine, and something inside Ava stirred. She didn't think, she didn't plan, she just knew she had to help. With determination that would have surprised her parents, Ava crawled away from the window. She moved faster than she ever had before, her small body driven by instinct. The cabin door stood tall before her, its handle too high for her to reach. But Ava had watched her parents open it countless times. She knew there was another way. The screen door. It had a latch at the bottom, within her reach. Her tiny fingers fumbled with the metal, pushing and pulling until something clicked. The door swung open, and cool morning air rushed in, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Ava paused at the threshold. She'd never been outside alone before. The world beyond the porch seemed huge, filled with unknown dangers. But the cub's cries pulled at her, calling her forward. She slid across the wooden porch on her belly, her pajamas catching on splinters. At the edge, where the steps began, she hesitated. They were steep, built for grown-up legs. But she'd crawled down the stairs inside many times. This couldn't be much different. Turning herself around, Ava lowered one foot, then the other. Step by careful step, she made her way down. When her feet finally touched grass, she felt a surge of triumph. She'd made it outside. Now she just had to reach the cub. The morning dew soaked through her pajamas immediately. The grass was taller than she'd expected, reaching up to her chest in places. She pushed through it like a tiny explorer, her eyes fixed on her destination. The cub's whimpers guided her forward, growing louder with each step. Branches crackled beneath her hands and knees, rocks scraped her palms. A spider web caught in her hair, but she barely noticed. Nothing mattered except reaching that hurt animal. Nothing mattered except helping. As she got closer, she could see the cub more clearly. Its fur was matted with dirt and pine needles. One of its back legs was twisted at an odd angle, trapped beneath the heaviest log. The cub's eyes, round and desperate, met hers across the clearing. For a moment, they just stared at each other, A human baby and a bear cub, separated by species but connected by need. The cub stopped struggling, as if sensing that help had finally arrived. Ava approached slowly, instinctively knowing not to startle the injured animal. As she got closer, she could see the full extent of the trap. The main log pinning the cub was enormous, easily twice Ava's weight. But beneath it, wedged between the log and the ground, were several smaller branches. These created space, preventing the cub from being completely crushed. The cub whimpered again, softer this time. To Ava, it sounded like, "Please." She reached out with one chubby hand, not to touch, but to assess. Her fingers traced the air above the logs, trying to understand the puzzle before her. She'd played with building blocks before. She knew how things could stack and balance. Maybe this wasn't so different. A rustling in the bushes made them both freeze. Through the undergrowth, Ava saw a flash of brown fur. Bigger than the cub, much bigger. The mother bear was returning. Ava's first instinct was to hide. Every story she'd ever heard warned about mother bears protecting their cubs. But as she started to back away, she saw something that stopped her cold. The mother bear wasn't coming toward them. She was running away, crashing through the brush in panic. Something had spooked her. Something dangerous enough to make her abandon her trapped cub. In the distance, a deep growl echoed through the forest. Not a bear growl, something else. Something that made the hairs on Ava's neck stand up. The sound was guttural, ancient, like rocks grinding against each other deep underground. Ava's heart hammered against her tiny ribcage. The cub beneath the log seemed to understand the danger, too. Its whimpering stopped completely, replaced by absolute stillness. They both listened, barely breathing, as the growl came again, closer this time. Through the thick morning mist, a shape began to emerge. At first, Ava thought it was just another bear, maybe the cub's father returning. But as the creature stepped into the clearing, she realized this was nothing like any animal she'd seen in her picture books. Standing on 4 massive legs, the creature resembled a wolf, but much larger. Its fur was a strange silvery color that seemed to shift and shimmer in the dim light. Most unsettling were its eyes, glowing an eerie yellow. They seemed to pierce right through the fog, searching, hunting. The creature sniffed the air, its head turning slowly as it caught different scents. When its gaze fell on Ava and the trapped cub, those yellow eyes narrowed. A long, wet tongue slid across razor-sharp teeth as the creature began walking toward them. Ava knew she should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to turn and flee back to the safety of the cabin. But as she looked down at the helpless cub, still pinned beneath the logs, she couldn't move. The little bear had needed her help, and now they both needed protection. With a courage that surprised even herself, Ava positioned her small body between the approaching predator and the injured cub. Her tiny fists clenched as she let out the loudest sound she could manage, a high-pitched shriek that echoed through the forest. The sound startled the wolf-like creature, making it pause mid-stride. It tilted its massive head, studying this tiny human who dared to challenge it. For a moment, they existed in a strange standoff, a toddler protecting a bear cub from a supernatural predator. Behind her, Ava heard new sounds. The cub was moving again, but differently this time. No longer struggling to escape, it seemed to be gathering strength, as if Ava's bravery had inspired it to fight back. The wolf creature took another step forward, and Ava noticed something else odd about it. Its paws left strange prints in the wet earth. Not just paw prints, but symbols, ancient-looking marks that glowed faintly before fading away. Suddenly, the creature lunged. Ava screamed again, throwing herself backward to shield the cub. She felt the rush of air as massive jaws snapped shut just inches from where her head had been. The creature's hot breath washed over her, smelling of death and dark places. But then, something miraculous happened. From the forest came a chorus of howls. Real wolves this time, not the strange creature stalking them. A pack emerged from the mist, surrounding the wolf-like beast. Their alpha, a magnificent gray wolf with battle scars crisscrossing its muzzle, stepped forward. The supernatural creature snarled at the wolf pack, but there was uncertainty in its glowing eyes now. It had expected easy prey, not a coordinated defense from the forest's natural predators. As the standoff continued, Ava heard another sound, one that made her heart soar with hope. It was her mother's voice, distant but growing closer. "Ava, Ava, where are you, baby?" Her parents had discovered her absence. They were searching for her. The wolf creature's head snapped toward the sound of human voices. With a deep, frustrated growl, it took several steps backward. The wolf pack maintained their defensive circle, and after one final, hate-filled look at Ava and the cub, the creature melted back into the mist from which it had come. The wolves watched until it was completely gone before turning their attention to Ava and the cub. The alpha wolf approached slowly, its yellow eyes, normal yellow, not the eerie glow of the other creature, studying them carefully. To Ava's amazement, the wolf lowered its massive head and gently nuzzled her shoulder, as if thanking her for protecting one of the forest's young. The rest of the pack followed suit, each wolf acknowledging the tiny human who had shown such bravery. But the immediate danger wasn't over. The cub was still trapped, and now Ava could see that its back leg looked even worse than she'd first thought. The twisted angle suggested a bad break, and the poor thing was growing weaker by the minute. The alpha wolf seemed to understand this too. It moved to inspect the pile of logs trapping the cub, sniffing carefully around the edges. Then, in a display of intelligence that Ava would remember for the rest of her life, the wolf began to dig. Its powerful front paws scraped away dirt and debris from around the logs, creating small gaps. As it worked, the other wolves joined in, each choosing a different spot to excavate. They were creating space, relieving pressure, working together with a coordination that seemed almost human. Ava watched in fascination, but then remembered she could help too. She crawled to where the alpha was digging and began pulling away small stones and twigs that the wolves couldn't grasp with their paws. Her tiny fingers worked quickly, driven by pure determination. As they worked together, girl, wolves, and time itself seemed to slow down. The wolf creature's strange prints in the dirt began to glow again, more intensely this time. The marks connected, forming a pattern that looked like some kind of ancient circle or trap. The alpha wolf suddenly stopped digging and let out a warning howl. The other wolves backed away from the glowing symbols, their hackles rising. Something was wrong. Ava, in her innocent determination, didn't understand the danger. She kept working, pulling away one more piece of wood. It was barely bigger than her thumb, but its removal triggered something unexpected. The logs shifted, but instead of crushing the cub as everyone feared, the logs began to rise. Slowly at first, then faster, they lifted into the air, defying gravity itself. The glowing symbols pulsed with energy, and Ava realized these weren't random marks. They were part of something much older, much more powerful than anyone had realized. The cub found itself suddenly free, though too weak to move away. It lay panting in the depression where it had been trapped, its injured leg twisted beneath it. The floating logs hovered for a moment, held by invisible forces connected to the glowing symbols. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, the magic, if that's what it was, shattered. The logs crashed down around them, missing Ava and the cub by mere feet, their fall controlled somehow to avoid causing further harm. In the sudden silence that followed, Ava heard her parents calling again, much closer now. Through the trees, she could see flashlights cutting through the morning fog. Her father's deep voice boomed with worry and relief. The wolf pack seemed to understand that human help was arriving. The alpha gave one last look at Ava, then at the now free cub, before turning to lead its pack back into the forest. They faded into the mist as silently as they had appeared. Ava turned her attention back to the cub. It was still breathing heavily, its eyes half closed with pain and exhaustion. Its back leg was definitely broken, bent at an unnatural angle that made Ava's own legs ache in sympathy. With trembling hands, she reached out to touch the cub's head. Its fur was remarkably soft, despite being matted with dirt. The cub opened its eyes fully and looked at her. In that gaze, Ava saw something she couldn't quite explain. Recognition, gratitude, and something else. Something that suggested this cub understood more than a wild animal should. The sound of crashing footsteps grew louder. Her parents had found the clearing. "Oh my God, Ava!" Her mother's scream pierced the air as she burst through the undergrowth. Ava turned to see both her parents frozen at the edge of the clearing, their faces masks of shock and fear. "Don't move," her father commanded, his voice tight with terror. He had spotted the injured cub just feet from his daughter. But Ava, with the wisdom of the very young who haven't yet learned to fear what they should, simply reached for her mother. "Mama," she said, her first word in hours. "Baby hurt." Her father moved first, carefully approaching with his flashlight held like a weapon. But as he drew closer, he saw what Ava had seen. This wasn't an aggressive animal. This was a child, just like his own, trapped and injured and needing help. "Jessica," he called softly to his wife, "call the wildlife rescue. This cub needs medical attention." "But where's the mother?" Jessica Bennett asked, her worry evident. "A mother bear with a cub is incredibly dangerous, Michael." "I haven't seen any sign of an adult bear," Michael replied, kneeling slowly next to Ava and the cub. "And look at this." He gestured to the strangely arranged logs, the glowing symbols now fading, but still visible in the dirt. "Something's not right here." The cub whimpered again, and to everyone's surprise, it nuzzled closer to Ava. The tiny girl patted its head gently, cooing softly like she did with her stuffed animals at home. "Michael, I can't get service out here," Jessica said, her phone held high as she searched for signal. "We'll have to drive to the main road." "I'm not leaving them alone," Michael said firmly. "You go. Drive fast. I'll stay with Ava and keep an eye on the cub." As Jessica hurried away, Michael sat down beside his daughter. He'd brought a small emergency kit with him, something he always carried into the woods, and began examining the cub's injured leg more closely. "This isn't good, baby," he told Ava, though she probably didn't understand the medical terminology he was about to use. "It's a compound fracture. See how the bone's broken through the skin? That's going to need surgery, not just a splint." Ava watched as her father worked, fascinated by his gentleness with the wild animal. Michael was a pediatric surgeon, and though he'd never treated a bear before, the principles were the same. Stop the bleeding, stabilize the break, prevent shock. He had limited supplies, but he made do with what he had. A handkerchief became a bandage. His belt could serve as a tourniquet if needed. As he worked, he kept talking to Ava, explaining each step in simple terms. "We have to be very careful with wild animals, sweetheart. They can be unpredictable when they're hurt. But this little guy seems to trust you." Indeed, the cub remained remarkably calm under Michael's examination. It flinched at the pain, but didn't try to bite or claw. Instead, it kept its gaze fixed on Ava, as if drawing strength from her presence. As the morning wore on, other forest sounds began to return. Birds resumed their singing. Small creatures rustled in the underbrush. The fog was lifting, revealing the true beauty of the clearing. But something else was returning too. The glowing symbols in the dirt began to pulse again, fainter now, but still visible. Michael noticed them this time, his medical training momentarily forgotten as he studied the strange patterns. "Ava, did you see these marks before? When did they appear?" Ava pointed toward the trees where the wolf creature had disappeared. "Bad dog, run away. Nice doggies help." Michael's blood ran cold. "Dogs? Ava, what dogs? There are no dogs out here." But even as he spoke, he heard it, a low rumble from the forest. Not growling exactly, but something that vibrated through the ground beneath them. The marks began glowing brighter, responding to the sound. He scooped Ava into his arms protectively, holding her close. The cub, sensing danger, tried to stand on its 3 good legs. That's when they saw it. Not the wolf creature this time, but something else entirely. Between the trees, a figure appeared. Tall and slender, it moved with an fluid grace that didn't seem quite human. Its skin appeared to shimmer like oil on water, constantly shifting colors. As it emerged into the clearing, Michael could see it more clearly. It was humanoid in shape, but definitely not human. Its face was elongated, with features that seemed to slide and rearrange themselves as he watched. The eyes were the worst. Completely black, like pools of oil that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. The being stopped at the edge of the clearing, studying the scene before it. Its gaze moved from the injured cub to Ava, to the glowing symbols, and for the first time, something like emotion crossed its shifting features. Confusion, perhaps, or surprise. "Who's there?" Michael demanded, his voice steady despite his fear. "What do you want?" The creature tilted its head, and when it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The covenant is broken." The words were like ice in the morning air. "The child should not be here. The cubs should not be protected. The circle remains incomplete." Michael didn't understand any of this, but he understood threat when he heard it. He backed away slowly, calculating the distance to the trees, the paths back to the cabin. "We mean no harm," he said carefully. "My daughter was trying to help an injured animal. We'll leave immediately." "Your daughter?" The creature paused, those black eyes focusing on Ava with unsettling intensity. "She opens doors that should remain closed. She sees what should not be seen." Ava, surprisingly, didn't seem afraid. She reached out toward the creature, babbling softly. The being's form rippled, as if responding to her voice. "Fascinating," it murmured. "The young one carries the old blood." Before Michael could ask what that meant, the forest fell, absolutely silent. Even the wind stopped. In that supernatural quiet, the creature raised one long-fingered hand. "The ancient protections are failing. The veil grows thin. This place," it gestured to the clearing, "was once a guardian station. The symbols you see are warnings, wards against that which hunts in the spaces between." Michael's mind raced. This sounded like mythology, fantasy, not reality. But he'd seen the wolf creature, witnessed the magic of the floating logs, watched impossible symbols glow in the earth. Reality had shifted around them. "What does this have to do with my daughter?" he asked, the parent in him focusing on the only thing that truly mattered. "The old blood awakens in times of need," the creature explained. "Your daughter has the gift, the ability to bridge worlds, to see truth where others see only shadows. The cub she protects is not merely a bear. It is a guardian's descendant, one of the few left who maintain the balance. As if confirming this, the cub lifted its head and let out a sound that was definitely not normal. It was a howl, but layered somehow, as if multiple voices were singing in harmony. The glowing symbols responded, flaring bright before slowly fading to nothing. "The wards are closing," the creature announced. "Tomorrow, this will be just a normal clearing again. The magic will sleep. But your daughter and the guardian's descendant, they will remember. They will always remember." Michael watched in amazement as the creature's form began to dissolve, becoming translucent, then misty, then gone entirely. The supernatural silence broke like a bubble popping, and normal forest sounds rushed back in. The cub whimpered one more time, drawing their attention back to its immediate needs. Whatever had just happened, whatever ancient magic or cosmic balance had been involved, their priority remained the same. This injured animal needed help. 20 minutes later, Jessica arrived with the wildlife rescue team. The veterinarian who examined the cub was puzzled by several things: the nature of the break, the cub's unusually docile behavior, and most of all the fact that there was no trace of the mother bear anywhere in the area. "This is highly unusual," Dr. Elizabeth Chang commented as her team carefully loaded the cub onto a stretcher. "Bear cubs this young don't typically survive long without their mother." "Maybe she'll come back for it," Jessica suggested, though she kept glancing at the now normal clearing where the impossible had happened. "We can't count on that," Dr. Chang replied. "We'll treat the leg, but we may have to raise this little one ourselves, at least until we can find a suitable surrogate mother." As they prepared to leave the clearing, Ava began to cry. She reached for the cub, protesting as it was carried away. The cub responded to her distress, letting out that strange harmonic howl again. "We come visit?" Ava asked in her limited vocabulary, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Of course, baby," Michael assured her, exchanging a meaningful look with Jessica over their daughter's head. "We'll come visit every day." What he didn't say, what he couldn't say without sounding insane, was that he suspected this wasn't the end of their connection to this extraordinary cub. Whatever Ava had awakened this morning, whatever old blood or ancient gift ran through her veins, had bound her to this animal in ways they couldn't yet understand. As they walked back to the cabin, Ava clutched between them. Michael noticed something else. The trees seemed to lean toward them slightly, as if acknowledging their passage. Birds followed overhead, not in threat, but in apparent curiosity. Small animals paused in their morning activities to watch them pass. The forest itself had changed its relationship with them, all because of a tiny girl who heard a cry for help and was brave enough to answer it. Back at the cabin, as they cleaned up and prepared for the visit to the wildlife sanctuary, Jessica found something odd in the mudroom. Scattered on the floor were pine cones arranged in a perfect circle, with a single black feather in the center. Neither she nor Michael had left them there. Ava giggled when she saw them. "Presents," she declared happily. "Forest friends make presents." Jessica bent to study the arrangement more closely. The pine cones were positioned with mathematical precision in the feather. It wasn't from any bird she recognized. It seemed to shimmer with the same oily quality as the strange creature's skin had. "Michael," she called softly, "I think we need to talk about what really happened out there." As Michael joined her to examine the mysterious arrangement, they both understood that their lives, and more importantly, Ava's life, had irrevocably changed. The thin place their daughter had discovered, the ancient magic she had touched, would always be a part of them now. And somewhere in the wildlife sanctuary, a bear cub with glowing amber eyes was healing, waiting patiently for the day when it would see its tiny human protector again. And somewhere in the wildlife sanctuary, a bear cub with glowing amber eyes was healing, waiting patiently for the day when it would see its tiny human protector again. The sanctuary wasn't what they expected. When they arrived the next morning, Dr. Chang led them through a series of security checkpoints that seemed more suited to a government facility than a wildlife rescue center. Cameras tracked their every movement, and several doors required key cards that Dr. Chang produced from her pocket with practiced ease. "We have some special residents here," she explained as they walked down a long corridor. "The cub you found isn't our first unusual case." The building's architecture was strange, too. Curved walls, no sharp corners, and something embedded in the walls that seemed to hum with barely audible energy. Ava kept reaching out to touch the smooth surfaces, her eyes wide with wonder. They reached a door marked simply 97. Through the window, they could see the cub lying on a padded surface, its leg now properly splinted and wrapped. When Ava pressed her face against the glass, the cub's head snapped up immediately. Those amber eyes, definitely glowing now, not just Ava's imagination, locked onto hers. "Remarkable," Dr. Chang murmured. "I've never seen such a strong bond form so quickly, especially with—" She trailed off, as if catching herself saying too much. "Especially with what?" Michael pressed. Dr. Chang hesitated, clearly weighing her words. Finally, she gestured to a nearby office. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Inside the office, walls lined with books and certificates created a cozy atmosphere at odds with the sterile facility outside. But Michael noticed many of the books had titles he couldn't read, languages that didn't look quite like anything he'd encountered before. "My predecessor collected them," Dr. Chang explained, noticing his gaze. "Dr. Marcus Blackwood. He's retired now, but he established this facility specifically to handle cases like your cub." "Cases like what, exactly?" Jessica asked, bouncing Ava on her lap to keep her occupied. Dr. Chang pulled out a thick file folder. Inside were photographs, documents, and medical charts. "We've documented 17 instances over the past 40 years of what we call liminal animals, creatures that exist on the boundary between the natural and supernatural worlds." She spread the photos across her desk. Bears, wolves, birds, even a deer, all with eyes that glowed with unnatural light, all saved under circumstances involving human children. "The pattern is always the same," she continued. "A child intervenes to save the animal, some form of ancient magic is triggered, and the animal develops abilities, enhanced intelligence, extended lifespan, and most critically a psychic bond with their human savior." Michael felt the room spin slightly. "You're saying my daughter has a psychic connection to that cub?" "Not just a connection, a covenant. These children become guardians and these animals become their wardens. Together, they maintain equilibrium between our world and the other one." "The other one?" Jessica's voice was faint. "There are places where reality wears thin," Dr. Chang explained. "Your cabin happens to sit on one of them. Over centuries, certain families were charged with protecting these places, with the help of their wardens. But as people stopped believing in magic, the old knowledge was lost. Until something extraordinary happens, like your daughter hearing the cub's call for help." Ava had been quietly playing with her mother's necklace, but now she pointed to the window. "Baby wants out." Dr. Chang checked her watch. "Actually, it's almost time for his physical therapy session. Would you like to come? It might help if you're there." In the therapy room, the cub showed remarkable progress. Despite the serious nature of its injury, it was already attempting to bear weight on the splinted leg. But when the therapist tried to guide it through exercises, the cub grew agitated, refusing to cooperate. This happens with most of our liminal animals, the therapist, a young man named Owen, explained. They respond poorly to standard training methods. Ava squirmed until Jessica put her down. The toddler immediately crawled toward the cub, talking to it in her garbled baby language. To everyone's amazement, the cub responded, settling beside her and allowing the exercises to begin, but only with Ava's gentle touch guiding it. How did she know what to do? Owen asked, genuinely mystified. She just knows, Michael said, watching his daughter with new eyes. She's always been perceptive, but this is something else entirely. As the therapy session continued, Dr. Chang received a call that made her face grow pale. She stepped away to take it privately, returning with obvious distress. "There's been another incident at the cabin settlement," she announced. 3 more families reported strange occurrences last night. Lights in the forest, animals gathering in unusual patterns, and she glanced at Ava before continuing in a lower voice. Children having vivid dreams about protecting forest creatures. Michael's blood ran cold. "You're saying this is spreading?" "The barrier is weakening faster than we anticipated, Doctor," Chang admitted. "Your daughter's intervention may have been a catalyst. When one guardian awakens, others often follow." That evening, back at their cabin, the strange occurrences began in earnest. It started with the wildlife. Birds congregated on their roof in numbers that blocked the satellite dish. Squirrels and rabbits formed an unusual perimeter around the property. Even the insects seemed to avoid their house entirely, creating a bubble of silence in the normally buzzing forest. Inside, Ava's behavior changed too. She began arranging her toys in specific patterns. Circles, spirals, complex geometric shapes that seemed to hold meaning beyond her apparent vocabulary level. When Jessica tried to rearrange them, Ava would grow distressed and restore them exactly as they had been. Michael's sleep was plagued by dreams. In them, he walked through the forest and encountered creatures that spoke in languages he somehow understood. They warned him about the breach, a weakening in reality's fabric that threatened both worlds. On the 3rd night after finding the cub, Ava woke screaming. Not the normal distress of a toddler's nightmare, but a sound of pure terror that had Michael and Jessica running to her room. They found her standing in her crib, pointing at the window. "They coming," she sobbed. "Bad things. Need help, baby bear." Michael looked out the window. In the moonlight, he saw shapes moving through the trees. Not animals this time, but figures that seemed to shift and blur at the edges, like watercolors running in the rain. "Pack a bag," he told Jessica grimly. "We're going to the sanctuary." The drive through the night was tense. Jessica held Ava, who had calmed somewhat, but kept whispering about needing to protect baby bear. As they reached the main road, Michael's headlights caught something that made him slam on the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road was a woman, or at least something that looked like a woman. As she turned toward their car, Michael saw her eyes glowed with the same eerie light as the wolf creature. "Drive," Jessica breathed. "Michael, drive." He pressed the accelerator, expecting to feel the impact. Instead, the car passed through the figure as if she were made of mist. In the rearview mirror, she watched them go, a smile spreading across her face that was too wide, showing too many teeth. At the sanctuary, alarms were blaring. Security guards rushed to escort them inside, weapons drawn, though Michael couldn't imagine what guns would do against supernatural threats. "We've been monitoring increased activity all night," Dr. Chang explained as she checked Ava for any signs of distress. The breach is widening. Your daughter's connection to the cub has made you targets. Targets for what? Michael demanded. The things that want to cross over, she said simply. Most of them are benign, spirits, nature entities, beings of pure energy. But others, they hunger for our reality. They feed on intention, on fear, on the bonds between guardian and warden. She led them to a reinforced room where the cub was already waiting. Someone had wheeled its bed here, anticipating their arrival. When Ava saw the cub, she reached for it immediately, and the animal responded by settling its massive head on her tiny lap. The good news is, Doctor, Chang continued, they can't maintain form in our world without an anchor. As long as the Guardians remain aware and protective of their wardens, the barrier holds. And the bad news? Jessica asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The bad news is that something has changed. In all our recorded history, we've never documented the breach accelerating this quickly. Whatever happened in your clearing, the ancient symbols reactivating, the direct contact with both protective and hostile entities, it's unprecedented. Over the next several hours, they learned more about the sanctuary's true purpose. Dr. Chang showed them underground chambers where other guardian-warden pairs were housed during times of crisis. Children of all ages, from toddlers to teenagers, each bonded with an animal companion that showed supernatural characteristics. This is Thomas. She introduced them to a sullen 14-year-old boy sitting with a massive raven. The bird's feathers shimmered with different colors as the light hit them at various angles. He's been with us for 6 years. Thomas barely acknowledged them, but the raven studied them with intelligent eyes. When it spoke, Michael nearly jumped out of his skin. Another guardian awakens while the breach widens. The raven croaked in a voice far too human. We see pattern. We see problem. Your warden can talk? Jessica gasped. They all can, given enough time and connection, Dr. Chang explained. It's one of the first abilities that develops, communication beyond language barriers. They met Elena, 22, whose warden was a white wolf with eyes like glacial ice. She had been with the sanctuary the longest, and seemed to serve as a leader among the guardians. The breach ebbs and flows, Elena explained as her wolf lay beside her feet. My grandmother was a guardian before me. She always said there would come a time when the old barriers would finally fail, when the two worlds would bleed into each other completely. And you think that time is now? Michael asked. Your daughter's power is unusual, Elena said, studying Ava with interest. Most guardians develop gradually, over years, but her connection to her warden formed instantly, completely. That kind of bond is mentioned in the oldest texts, but we thought they were legend. What do you mean? Jessica asked, instinctively holding Ava closer. The texts speak of bridge guardians, children born with the ability to unite multiple worlds, to heal the fractures between realities rather than simply guard them. If Ava is one of these, Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. She could either save everything or destroy it all. As if responding to the conversation, Ava suddenly stood up in her mother's arms and pointed to the ceiling. They hear now, she announced. The building shuddered. Emergency lights flickered on as the main power failed. Through the facility's sophisticated monitoring systems, they watched as otherworldly figures materialized outside. Some beautiful and terrifying, others too strange to comprehend. They pressed against the building's barriers, testing the magical wards that protected the sanctuary. The defenses should hold, Dr. Chang assured them, but her voice carried uncertainty. The cub stood up despite its injury, positioning itself between Ava and the nearest wall. Its eyes blazed with protective light, and it let out a roar that shook the windows. "The Guardians need to work together," Elena said, moving to her station at a central console. "Thomas, get the others. We're going to need everyone." Within minutes, the facility's guardian room filled with children and their wardens. A 7-year-old girl with a silver fox, twin 12-year-old boys who shared a bond with a white stag, and others whose partnerships defied easy explanation. "Form a circle," Elena commanded. "Link hands, humans and wardens together. The barrier magic is strongest when we unite." Michael and Jessica found themselves included in this circle, though they felt inadequate among these experienced guardians. Ava sat in the center with the cub, both radiating a light that grew stronger as the circle closed. "Focus on protection," Elena instructed. "Think about what you're defending. Why your warden chose you. Why you answered their call." As they concentrated, Michael felt something incredible. He could sense the other guardians' thoughts, their memories of first meeting their wardens, their determination to protect what mattered most. But strongest of all was Ava's presence, a pure, unfiltered love for the cub that had needed her help. The building shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the windows, they could see the supernatural entities had organized themselves, working together to breach the sanctuary's defenses. "It's not working," Thomas's voice cracked with fear. "They're too strong." "Wait," Ava said clearly, more clearly than any words she'd spoken before. "Need outside peoples, too." "What does she mean?" Jessica asked. But even as she spoke, she heard them. Voices from the nearby town. People who had no idea about the supernatural battle happening on their doorstep. "The human connection," Elena breathed. "Of course. The barrier isn't just magical. It's bound to human belief, human will. If the townspeople don't care, don't believe, don't protect, then their indifference creates weakness," Dr. Chang finished. "We need to include them somehow." "But how?" Michael asked. "They think this is just a wildlife sanctuary." Ava pointed to the windows, to the town lights visible in the distance. "Tell them, show them, need help." Dr. Chang rushed to her communication panel. "All staff initiate Protocol 7. Yes, 7. We're going public." Protocol 7, it turned out, involved contacting every household in the town with an emergency alert. Within minutes, Dr. Chang was broadcasting live to every television, radio, and phone in the area. "Residents of Millbrook, this is Dr. Elizabeth Chang at the Wildlife Sanctuary. We are facing an unprecedented environmental crisis. The forest you've lived beside all your lives contains wonders and dangers beyond our understanding. Tonight, we need your help to protect everything we hold dear." She went on to explain, in careful, measured terms that walk the line between truth and believability, about ancient forest spirits, environmental energies, and the need for community intervention. She didn't mention magic or supernatural beings, but focused instead on concepts of interconnected ecosystems, traditional ecological knowledge, and the power of collective human will. To their amazement, people responded. First hundreds, then thousands of town residents began arriving at the sanctuary, their cars forming processions of light along the forest roads. Many had experienced strange occurrences themselves, disappearing pets that returned with glowing eyes, dreams about forest spirits, unexplained phenomena that they'd dismissed until now. As the townspeople gathered outside the facility, something remarkable happened. The supernatural entity's assault on the barriers began to weaken. Human presence, human belief and protection, however imperfect, strengthened the magical wards. "It's working," Elena said with amazement. "The combined will of protective humans is reinforcing the ancient magic." Inside their circle, Ava and the cub had become luminous, their shared light pulsing in rhythm with thousands of human heartbeats outside. The other guardian-warden pairs felt the surge of power, their own connections deepening in response. But victory brought new challenges. As dawn approached, the supernatural entities retreated, but they didn't disappear. They reformed in new patterns, demonstrating strategic intelligence that terrified even the experienced guardians. "They're learning," Thomas observed, his raven companion mirroring his concern, "adapting to our defenses. And they'll be back," Elena agreed, "stronger next time." Dr. Chang finished her last call with the facility's board of directors. "Unanimous vote," she announced. "We're expanding the program. Full disclosure to willing families. Guardianship training available to any child who shows the aptitude." "You're creating an army," Michael realized. "We're building hope," she corrected. "The breach won't be solved by keeping secrets anymore. We need every guardian we can find, every human willing to stand with them." Ava yawned, the supernatural energy finally draining her toddler reserves. As the immediate crisis passed, exhaustion claimed everyone in the circle. But as they rested, leaning against their wardens, they knew this was just the beginning. The sun rose over Millbrook, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Outside the sanctuary, hundreds of townspeople had erected a makeshift camp, standing guard throughout the night. Inside, new bonds were forming, not just between individual guardians and wardens, but between all who chose to protect their shared reality. In the days that followed, the sanctuary transformed. The town's mayor officially recognized the facility's expanded mission. Local schools integrated curriculum about environmental stewardship, ancient wisdom, and the responsibility of protecting what we cannot fully understand. Ava's connection to the cub deepened. Within a week, the animal's leg showed miraculous healing, much faster than natural for a normal bear. When Dr. Chang removed the splint, they discovered something extraordinary. The bone had healed with luminescent filaments, threads of light that pulsed in sync with Ava's heartbeat. "I've never seen anything like it," she admitted, examining the X-rays. "The connection between guardian and warden is manifesting in literal cellular changes." As the cub, now officially named Luminos, Ava's attempt at saying light, regained mobility, they noticed other changes. Its coat had developed an iridescent quality, shifting between brown and silver depending on the angle of light. Its paws left traces of bioluminescence on certain surfaces, particularly aged wood and stone. But physical changes were matched by intellectual ones. Luminos began responding to complex commands, understanding human speech at a level that defied Ursine intelligence. By the end of the second week, the cub was attempting to form words, rough, growling approximations that only Ava could completely understand. "Door," Luminos would grumble when he wanted outside. "Ava hungry," he'd announce when his guardian needed feeding before she could express it herself. The other guardian-warden pairs observed these developments with fascination and no small amount of concern. It typically takes years for wardens to achieve this level of communication, Elena admitted during one of their daily meetings. "Ava and Luminos are rewriting everything we thought we knew about guardian bonds." Thomas's raven, who had introduced himself as Corvus, was particularly intrigued. "New patterns emerging," he croaked during their sessions. "Bridge Guardian changes everything, makes stronger but also vulnerable." The vulnerability Corvus sensed manifested in subtle ways. Ava began experiencing moments where she seemed to perceive multiple realities simultaneously, seeing both the physical world and the ethereal plane where magic flowed like rivers of light. These episodes left her confused and frightened, reaching for her parents with tears in her eyes. "I see scary things," she would whisper, burying her face in Jessica's shoulder. "Things with too many eyes." Dr. Chang worked tirelessly to understand these visions. "She's glimpsing beings that exist outside our normal dimensional space," she theorized. "As a bridge guardian, her consciousness isn't limited to our reality alone." They established protocols to help Ava manage these overwhelming sensory experiences. Meditation techniques adapted for toddlers, protective talismans created by other guardians, and most importantly, the constant presence of Luminos, whose own magical nature helped filter and interpret the supernatural input. But protection cuts both ways. One evening, as Michael was tucking Ava into bed at their cabin, they had returned home after the immediate crisis passed, he noticed changes in his own perceptions. Shadows moved with purpose. Whispers rode the wind. The line between imagination and reality blurred. "Dad?" Ava said from her toddler bed, where Luminos curled protectively around her feet. "You hear them too now?" "Hear what, sweetie?" "Everything, all the voices, forest talking, magic singing." Michael realized with a chill that the supernatural sensitivity was spreading. The guardian gift, once limited to certain children, was bleeding into their closest family members. Jessica experienced it too. She began seeing auras around living things, glowing fields of energy that indicated health, mood, and magical resonance. Plants in their garden responded to her emotions, blooming more vibrantly when she was happy, wilting slightly when she was distressed. "We're changing," she told Dr. Chang during their weekly checkup. "All of us." "Is this supposed to happen?" "The ancient texts mention secondary bonds," Dr. Chang admitted, reviewing notes from her predecessor. "When a bridge guardian awakens, their immediate family often develops residual abilities. It's a natural extension of the protective magic. But with expanded awareness came increased responsibility." Michael found himself drawn to other thin places in the forest, locations where reality wavered and supernatural entities gathered. Some were benevolent, nature spirits curious about the humans who could now perceive them. Others were distinctly hostile, probing for weaknesses in the barrier. 3 months after the initial incident, the community had fully adapted to their new reality. Millbrook became something unique, a town that existed partially in both the normal world and the supernatural realm. Tourists began arriving, drawn by rumors of healing springs, prophetic dreams, and animals that behaved with uncanny intelligence. The arrival of outsiders brought complications. A group claiming to be reality purists established protests outside the sanctuary, led by a charismatic speaker named Dr. Harold Brennan. They denounced the dangerous delusions being promoted by the facility. "There's no such thing as magic," Brennan declared at rallies. "These people are suffering from mass hysteria, possibly triggered by environmental toxins in the forest." His followers included scientists, skeptics, and a small but vocal group of townspeople who feared the changes happening around them. They demanded investigations, threatened lawsuits, and worked to discredit the sanctuary's mission. The conflict reached a boiling point when Brennan's own daughter, Chloe, began showing signs of guardian sensitivity. The 8-year-old snuck away from their temporary residence to visit the sanctuary, drawn by dreams of a wounded deer that needed help. Michael was present when Chloe found the deer, a graceful doe with an injured foreleg hiding in the sanctuary's outer woods. As the child approached, speaking softly and extending her hand, the deer's eyes began to glow. The moment of connection was witnessed by both sanctuary staff and Brennan himself, who had tracked his daughter there. "Stay away from her!" Brennan shouted, lunging forward to pull Chloe back. The deer reared in surprise and fear. Chloe instinctively threw herself forward to calm the animal. For a terrifying moment, father and daughter were caught in a magical feedback loop, Brennan's fear colliding with Chloe's compassion, creating a vortex of supernatural energy. Michael didn't think. He grabbed both of them, pulling them away from the deer as Luminos, who had accompanied them on their walk, stepped in to calm the animal with a low, rumbling vocalization. When the magical turbulence subsided, Brennan found himself cradling his daughter as she cried, not from fear, but from the overwhelming love she felt for the injured creature. His worldview, built on skepticism and scientific materialism, cracked in that moment. "I saw," he whispered, his face pale. "I saw everything. The magic, the pain, the connection, all of it." Dr. Chang approached carefully. "Sometimes the most rigid realities break most dramatically," she said gently. "Your daughter has the gift. Fighting it will only cause more pain for both of you." Over the following weeks, Brennan's transformation was remarkable. From the sanctuary's most vocal opponent, he became one of its staunchest advocates. But his scientific background brought valuable perspectives to understanding the supernatural phenomena. "We're not abandoning science," he insisted during a public press conference, his daughter and her new warden, the deer named Luna, by his side. "We're expanding it, acknowledging that our current models of reality are incomplete." He began documenting everything with rigorous methodology: energy measurements around guardian-warden pairs, psychological profiles tracking the development of supernatural abilities, and environmental studies of the changes occurring in thin places. "The data is irrefutable," Brennan wrote in his first published paper on the subject. "We're witnessing a fundamental shift in human evolution, a reintegration with natural and supernatural realms that our ancestors once knew intimately." His work legitimized the sanctuary's mission in academic circles. Universities began sending researchers. Government agencies, initially inclined to dismiss the phenomenon, started taking notice, but increased attention brought increased dangers. Reports surfaced of children disappearing in other parts of the country, young ones who showed guardian potential being abducted by groups who saw the supernatural as a resource to exploit. Some sought to weaponize the guardian-warden bonds. Others wanted to use bridge guardians like Ava to open pathways between worlds for their own purposes. "We're dealing with a new kind of threat," Elena reported to the sanctuary's expanded council. Her wolf, Fenrir, growled in agreement. Not supernatural entities, but humans who would manipulate the supernatural for power. Security measures increased dramatically. Protective enchantments were layered with modern technology. Cameras that could detect both physical and ethereal intrusions, alarm systems triggered by supernatural energy spikes, and a network of guardian families sharing intelligence. Despite, or perhaps because of, these precautions, Ava continued to develop at an unprecedented rate. By her second birthday, she was speaking in full sentences that mixed English with words from a language even the ancient books couldn't identify. "Heart speak," Luminos called it, when anyone else tried to master the tongue Ava used so naturally. Heartspeak seemed to be a universal language that bypassed normal communication barriers. Animals understood it instinctively. Plants responded to it. Even the most skeptical adults found themselves moved by its emotional resonance. "Ava, sweetheart, where did you learn these words?" Jessica asked one evening as they worked in the garden. Ava was singing to the flowers, using heart-speak syllables that made the blossoms orient themselves toward her voice. "Luminos teach, trees teach, magic teach," Ava replied simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Their garden had become a marvel, Vegetables grew to unusual sizes, had extended growing seasons, and yielded fruit with remarkable nutritional properties. Neighboring families, inspired by these results, began adopting similar practices. Soon, the entire town's agricultural output transformed. "We're creating a new paradigm," Dr. Chang observed during one of her visits. "Not just for human potential, but for how humans interact with their environment." But as the town of Millbrook flourished, darker forces took notice. 6 months after Ava's initial awakening, mysterious illnesses began affecting people in cities across the state. Victims described dreams of lost forests, disconnection from nature, and a creeping sense of spiritual emptiness. Medical tests found nothing physically wrong, yet the afflicted weakened daily. Dr. Chang recognized the symptoms immediately. "Reality sickness," she diagnosed. "When the barrier between worlds shifts, some people can't adapt. They're literally dying from disconnection." The crisis forced difficult decisions. Moving affected individuals to thin places like Millbrook helped many, but the solution wasn't scalable. As more people awakened to supernatural realities, whether through guardian gifts or simple expanded awareness, societal structures strained. Schools struggled to accommodate children who could see spirits in their classrooms. Hospitals treated injuries that defied medical explanation. Legal systems grappled with crimes involving supernatural elements. Ava, as the first widely known bridge guardian, became something between a symbol and a target. News crews requested interviews. Politicians wanted photo opportunities. Less benevolent groups saw her as a key to unlocking powers beyond their comprehension. "We need to protect her childhood," Michael insisted during a heated family discussion. "She's still just a toddler, despite everything else." But protecting Ava's innocence became increasingly challenging when her gifts continued expanding. She began predicting events with startling accuracy, healing injuries with a touch, and most dramatically creating temporary bridges between the human world and what she called the Shimmer Place. The Shimmer Place, as Dr. Chang's research revealed, was the ethereal realm where pure magic existed. Ava could briefly pull others into this space, allowing them to experience reality from a perspective that fundamentally changed their understanding of existence. Thomas, the teenage guardian with Corvus, was one of the first to be invited into Ava's bridge. "It's everything," he tried to explain afterward, tears streaming down his face. "I saw the connections between all living things, the energy that flows through everything, the love that binds the universe together." The experience transformed Thomas from a sullen, hesitant guardian into a confident leader who found purpose in teaching other young guardians. But it also revealed the immense responsibility Ava carried. Bridge guardians don't just connect worlds, Elena realized. They have the power to reshape reality itself based on their intentions and emotions, in the hands of a toddler. The implications were staggering. Ava's dreams could literally manifest if strong enough. Her fears could create shadowy entities. Her love could bring miraculous healings. The entire fabric of reality bent to accommodate her unconscious will. Training became crucial. The sanctuary developed new programs specifically for Bridge Guardian development, though Ava remained their only confirmed case. They brought in experts from various traditions, shamans, mystics, scientists, and even former skeptics like Dr. Brennan. "We're building something unprecedented," Brennan noted in his journals. "A support system for children who carry the fate of multiple realities in their tiny hands." But support systems couldn't prevent every crisis. On the eve of Ava's second birthday, a delegation arrived from an organization calling themselves the Veiled Council. Dressed in formal attire and claiming to represent ancient guardian lineages, They demanded to meet with Ava and assess her abilities. "We don't recognize any authority beyond our own community," Michael told them firmly, "and my daughter isn't available for assessment by anyone." Their leader, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, smiled coldly. "Mr. Bennett, you misunderstand. This isn't a request. Bridge Guardians have historically been the property of the Council. We are simply reclaiming what belongs to us." The confrontation escalated quickly. The sanctuary's protective wards activated as the Council members revealed their own supernatural abilities. Practiced magic that they claimed predated modern Guardian manifestations by centuries. Lightning crackled around the building as ancient spells met newer protections. The other Guardian-Warden pairs mobilized immediately, forming defensive formations they'd practiced but hoped never to use. In the midst of the battle, as magical energies threatened to overwhelm the sanctuary's defenses, Ava appeared in the main hall. She walked calmly to the center of the conflict, Luminos by her side, still just a bear cub but radiating power that made the air shimmer. "Stop," Ava said simply, using heart-speak. The single word carried such weight that all combatants froze. The Veiled Council's leader attempted to resist, to continue her assault, but found herself unable to act against the child's command. "Old ways broken," Ava continued, her voice carrying wisdom beyond her years. "New ways coming. No one owns magic. Magic is love. Magic is share." What happened next would be debated among magical scholars for generations. Ava raised her small hands, and the Shimmer Place erupted into normal reality. Everyone present, Guardian, Council member, human supporter, was pulled into that space where truth was absolute and pretense impossible. In the Shimmer Place, the Council's true motivations became apparent. They weren't ancient guardians of tradition. They were power hoarders, people who had discovered supernatural abilities and sought to control their spread. Their centuries of tradition was a lie constructed to justify their authority. But Ava's truth-revealing light affected everyone equally. The sanctuary's defenders saw their own flaws and fears. They realized that some of their protective measures bordered on obsession. They understood that openness, not secrecy, was the path forward. When reality reassembled itself, the Council's leader, stripped of her pretenses, broke down weeping. "I was so afraid," she confessed, "afraid of losing control, afraid of not being special anymore." Dr. Chang helped her to a chair, showing the compassion that defined the sanctuary's spirit. "We all fear relevance," she said gently, "but inclusion expands power. It doesn't diminish it." The crisis revealed crucial truths about the evolving supernatural landscape. The age of secret societies controlling magical knowledge was ending. In its place, communities of transparency and shared growth were emerging. But endings bring beginnings, and sometimes they bring dangers no one anticipated. In the weeks following the Veiled Council incident, reports came in of reality tears appearing in various parts of the world. These weren't the controlled thin places that Guardians protected. These were chaotic rips where fragments of different realities bled together unpredictably. "The collective change is happening too quickly," Elena diagnosed after studying footage of a tear that appeared over New York City. "When one Bridge Guardian awakens, reality adapts gradually." But Ava's rapid development, combined with the mass awakening of Guardian sensitivity, we've accelerated the timeline beyond what the fabric of existence can handle smoothly. The tears manifested in various ways. In one location, extinct species briefly reappeared before vanishing again. In another, future technologies flickered into existence for minutes at a time. Some tears allowed glimpses into alternate histories, worlds where different choices had led to dramatically different outcomes. Most concerning were the entities that began slipping through these gaps. Unlike the supernatural beings previously encountered, these creatures came from realities so different that Earth's physics barely contained them. They appeared as impossible geometries, living music, time-given form. The sanctuary's role evolved from protector of thin places to emergency responder for reality breaches. Ava, despite her young age, became central to these efforts. Her Bridge Guardian abilities allowed her to sense upcoming tears before they manifested. There, she would point during their emergency responses, using her special sight to identify stress points in reality's fabric. Reality hurts there, need fixing. With her guidance, teams of Guardians learned to stabilize reality tears before they fully opened. The process required combined efforts, human will, animal wisdom, and magical harmony working together. But stabilization wasn't always possible. The sanctuary had to establish zones for managed irregularities, places where reality had permanently changed and adaptation was the only option. One such zone developed in the town's old quarry. A reality tier there had merged it with a location from a world where crystalline life forms had evolved instead of carbon-based ones. The resulting landscape was breathtaking. Crystal formations that pulsed with inner light, refracting the sun into rainbow patterns that shifted throughout the day. As Ava's second birthday approached, a pattern emerged in the reality tiers. They weren't random. They were forming a specific geometric shape across the globe, a massive pentagram with Millbrook at its center. It can't be coincidence, Dr. Brennan insisted during an emergency council meeting. These tiers are appearing with mathematical precision. Something, or someone, is orchestrating them. Investigations revealed disturbing evidence. Strange symbols, similar to those first seen in the clearing where Luminos was trapped, had been painted at each tier location. Analysis of paint samples showed they all originated from the same source, a rare mineral compound found only in the deepest parts of the forest surrounding Millbrook. "We're dealing with deliberate sabotage," Elena concluded. "Someone wants to force a complete collapse of the barrier between worlds." Security footage from various tier sites showed the same figure. A hooded individual who moved with unnatural grace. In one frame, caught by chance, the hood slipped just enough to reveal a face that sent chills through the sanctuary team. The figure had no face at all, just a swirling void where features should be. "A void walker," Dr. Chang breathed when shown the image. "I thought they were myth." According to the sanctuary's oldest texts, void walkers were entities that existed between realities, creatures whose purpose was to maintain cosmic balance by periodically destroying and recreating connections between worlds. "But why now?" Michael asked. "Why target Earth specifically?" The answer came from an unexpected source. During breakfast the next morning, Ava looked up from her cereal and announced, "The breach is too big. Old magic dying, need new magic." When questioned further, she explained in her simple way that the Void Walker wasn't destroying reality. It was trying to save it. The natural barriers between worlds had been weakening for centuries. The current crisis was merely the culmination of a much longer process. But forcing all realities to collide at once would be catastrophic, Dr. Brennan argued. Billions would die in the chaos. Unless... Dr. Chang's eyes widened with realization. Unless a Bridge Guardian, strong enough to control the process, was present. All eyes turned to Ava, who continued eating her breakfast with childlike innocence, Luminos curled protectively around her chair. "You're saying the Void Walker deliberately manipulated events to awaken Ava's powers?" Jessica asked, horror creeping into her voice. "That it arranged for Luminos to be trapped, knowing my daughter would hear him." "It's consistent with the patterns we're seeing," Elena confirmed grimly. The Voidwalker needs Ava to stabilize the inevitable collision of realities. But she's a child, Michael protested. She can't bear that responsibility. As they argued, Ava slipped down from her chair and walked to the window. Placing her small hand against the glass, she watched the sky with eyes that saw beyond normal vision. "Coming soon," she whispered to Luminos, who pressed against her side. Big change. The sanctuary's sensors confirmed her prediction. Energy readings around all known tier sites were increasing exponentially. The global pentagram was activating, channeling power toward Millbrook. They had less than 24 hours before complete barrier collapse. What followed was the largest mobilization of Guardian-Warden pairs in recorded history. From across the world, they converged on Millbrook. Some established and trained, others newly awakened and terrified of their gifts. The town transformed into a fortress of magical and technological defenses. Citizens who had embraced the new reality worked alongside Guardian families, preparing for whatever might emerge when the worlds collided. Through it all, Ava remained calm. Despite the chaos around her, she spent hours in quiet meditation with Luminos, both glowing with inner light that intensified as the deadline approached. "She's preparing," Elena observed, "gathering strength." On the evening before the predicted collapse, Ava asked to visit the original clearing where everything had begun. Despite security concerns, her parents agreed, sensing the importance of returning to where her journey started. But forcing all realities to collide at once would be catastrophic, Dr. Brennan argued. Billions would die in the chaos. Unless... Dr. Chang's eyes widened with realization. Unless a bridge guardian, strong enough to control the process, was present. All eyes turned to Ava, who continued eating her breakfast with childlike innocence, Luminos curled protectively around her chair. "You're saying the Voidwalker deliberately manipulated events to awaken Ava's powers?" Jessica asked, horror creeping into her voice. "That it arranged for Luminos to be trapped, knowing my daughter would hear him." "It's consistent with the patterns we're seeing," Elena confirmed grimly. "The Voidwalker needs Ava to stabilize the inevitable collision of realities." "But she's a child," Michael protested. "She can't bear that responsibility." As they argued, Ava slipped down from her chair and walked to the window. Placing her small hand against the glass, she watched the sky with eyes that saw beyond normal vision. "Coming soon," she whispered to Luminos, who pressed against her side. "Big change." The sanctuary's sensors confirmed her prediction. Energy readings around all known tier sites were increasing exponentially. The global pentagram was activating, channeling power toward Millbrook. They had less than 24 hours before complete barrier collapse. What followed was the largest mobilization of Guardian-Warden pairs in recorded history. From across the world, they converged on Millbrook, some established and trained, others newly awakened and terrified of their gifts. The town transformed into a fortress of magical and technological defenses. Citizens who had embraced the new reality worked alongside Guardian families, preparing for whatever might emerge when the worlds collided. Through it all, Ava remained calm. Despite the chaos around her, she spent hours in quiet meditation with Luminos, both glowing with inner light that intensified as the deadline approached. "She's preparing," Elena observed, "gathering strength." On the evening before the predicted collapse, Ava asked to visit the original clearing where everything had begun. Despite security concerns, her parents agreed, sensing the importance of returning to where her journey started.